Thank you, everyone, for waiting through all the announcements, and sorry for the delay again. Now, we're very fortunate actually today not to just have one very special guest speaker, but actually two, either of whom we probably could have had an entire event featuring today. I'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker, who she had requested she would like to give her personal introduction to our second speaker. So our featured guest speaker today is Staley, who was the Freedom from Religion Foundation Freethinker of the Year for 2008. In 2003, Kay filed and won a lawsuit against Harris County, contesting the Bible monument, which was on display at the Harris County Courthouse here in downtown Houston. She also later filed a lawsuit against the Houston City Council for the practice of holding prayers at city council meetings. For her efforts in fighting for the constitutional separation of church and state, Kay was awarded with Freethinker of the Year by Freedom from Religion Foundation in 2008. So please welcome our speaker, Kay Staley.
Yes, thank you all for having me today. Wow, what a crowd. I didn't realize how many. First of all, I would like to thank all of you so much that you're here to root for all the support you gave me when I was ill. It's been way over a year now. I appreciated the lovely flowers, and I appreciated the books, the humanist books you gave to me. I was told to pass them on, but I'm afraid I haven't passed them on because I love reading them over and over again. So I didn't fulfill my part of that, but I do appreciate everything all of you all did. I thought that I would, well, first of all, I'm with the old-fashioned legal pad because my computer this morning decided to shut down. I couldn't print out what I wanted. So I had to start over again. And I thought I would tell you how I came to be a plaintiff in this case. And it goes back a long way. First of all, my parents were allegedly religious, but they didn't go to church because they were letting blacks in. And of course this was, yeah, right. This was, you know, in the 50s. And so I got to miss, fortunately I got to miss all of the church stuff as a child, which I'm very grateful for. But my grandparents lived in Waco, the home of Baylor University, and I wanted to go to Baylor University. And it was quite amazing how that turned out. First of all, I went to my first semester to SMU, and I was in actually an English class, and we were had readings, and the one I remember the most, although we had others, was Bertrand Russell, and that's sort of how I got introduced into a world of secularism. And then when I went to Baylor, who would have ever thought, although the Baptists at that time, I don't know how many are left, but there are quite a few left, a very separation of church and state. The Baptist, there's a Baptist something convention that is very active and actually files a lot of briefs before the Supreme Court on separation of church and state. So they were that. But at Baylor, after reading Bertrand Russell at SMU, I wanted more of that, so I decided to get into the philosophy department. Well, that was wonderful because the professors there were just incredible, and they would ask members of the students that were in the religion department studying to be ministers, they would invite them over to speak to the class. And of course, we just tore them up, you know. Well, if God is all powerful and all, how come there's evil in the world and all that sort of stuff? And they would just be out just shaking their heads. So they were, and it was just great fun. And one of the things I remember the most is they would carry these banners around the campus, various ones, but the one I remember, Christ is the answer. You know, big, you know, banners with people on either side, you know. And the philosophy department, of course, we have our own, which is, what is the question? So it was just a lot of fun. And not long after I graduated, I went to Atlanta, of all things, and I needed a job real quick, and so I went to a temporary agency, and I was sent to the ACLU. And the ACLU had a regional office in Atlanta, and they were filing briefs on, one of the things I remember was jury exclusion of blacks. And so I was typing, that's what women did then. I was typing up briefs, although I couldn't really type with a darn. But we could, you know, strike over or strike out or whatever. And you won't believe this, Randall, the Supreme Court would accept those. Can you imagine how they would? I remember in the case I was in, they had a booklet about yay thick, very small writing that they had. Do you remember that, Randall? And they had to, that's what they filed before the Supreme Court. It was very professionally laid out. It cost Americans United a lot of money to do that. I was glad they came in and they did. But anyway, it was a lot of fun being there in the civil rights era with all that was going on with the ACLU. Well, I came back to Houston. I came to Houston shortly thereafter. I didn't want to leave Texas after all. And then during the years of the Nixon impeachment, I saw an article in the paper that said Charles Morgan, who was the one I worked for in Atlanta, was coming to speak. I think he might have been head of the ACLU at that time, was speaking at Rice, so I decided I would go to hear him speak. And at that meeting, they formed an impeach Nixon committee. And I decided, well, that'd be a great thing to join, and I did. And they loved me. It was before computers, and I could take shorthand. And nobody wanted that job. So that's how I got started with the ACLU. And during that rhubarb there of Nixon impeachment, I was invited to a party that had to do with that, and I met a professor from U of H Law School, and he said, well, have you ever considered going to law school? And I thought, huh? You know, that just wasn't, and he said, well, you know, we're looking for a few women now. Why don't you apply? And so I decided I would do that. And I didn't hear, and then a friend of mine said, well, why don't you call and see where your application is? And so I did call the law professor there and said, do you know what happened to my application? He said, wait a minute. And so he yelled at someone, what happened to Staley's registration? And he said, well, can't you put in an extra chair? And so I got into law school with an extra chair. And it was during the summer. It was the only summer class they ever had, and that's probably why they could do that, you know. So anyway, that's how that went. After I graduated, I decided that maybe I didn't want to be a lawyer that much after all, so I went into the real estate business. And then I had kept up my membership in the ACLU, and I saw that Randall was going to be speaking. And so I went. He was president of the ACLU at that time, and we were meeting at a restaurant over on Richmond. And as I recall it, and maybe you recall it differently, I remember you saying, then Randall was asked to speak before Americans United for Separation of Church and State. So it was a Warwick Hotel, I remember now. And at that time he said, isn't anybody interested in the Bible in front of the courthouse? And I was. I had been on that trail since I was in law school. And so that's how I became a plaintiff. Is that the way you remember?
It's been so long, that could be true. You could be
right.
right.
I wasn't, but that's what I remember. So that's how Randall and I got together and proceeded Randall proceeded to file suit with me as a plaintiff against Harris County for the Bible. Now, I want to say about the Bible, I don't know how many of you ever saw it, but it was, it was terrible. It was about this size right here and about this height, and there's glass, and you could see the Bible under that. And it had been there, I've forgotten how long, for a long time, honoring this person who was, allegedly a very Christian man. And I don't doubt that because he started the Star of Hope, and he was really a very philanthropic man for homeless and all. And I don't know, I guess from what I could understand that the Bible, well, of course, the real deal was they wanted the Bible in front of the courthouse, and that gave him an excuse to put it there, since he was well known and all. So I met Randall and I getting together, and I'm going to let Randall tell you about himself, because I'm not really sure what his connection to the ACLU and his journey in law school is. So I'll let him tell you about himself and tell you about the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here. I have never yet been in front of the Humanist Society to speak. I did get an award from the Houston Atheist Society over the Bible case, so forth. But I'm a lawyer, and I'm a civil rights lawyer here in Houston. I do mainly civil rights, which includes the Bill of Rights and any one of those laws. Like I just got done this week with a case involving the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable searches and seizures in federal court under the federal civil rights laws. And that's how you generally handle freedom from religion cases or Establishment Clause cases, is through this same law, because of course the First Amendment to the Constitution says basically that the government cannot establish religion. So that's how you fight these religion and government cases, is through that. So the mechanism is quite similar. And just to jump way ahead, about 5 years ago, I got interested in art because I bought a rather large place on the east side, and I started getting into art, and I did have done quite a bit of work, and some of mine works have religious themes to them, and that's why I have this here today. I do sculptures and so forth, and I'm going to see how bright you people are. You look pretty bright. I know that you guys are bright. So this is a hat. You see this? Okay. Now, can anybody figure out what this hat is for? Okay. Well, it's a religious hat. And you see this right here? Now, first of all, some of you might say that's an upside-down cross. But actually, it's an upside-down T, because religion worships no taxes. Religion, that is the big part about religion, is no taxes. So this is the religious hat worn by, whatever you want to call the leaders of that religion. I guess you call them a pope or whatever you want to call them. So now you guys are kind of harsh because you don't have any supernatural beings. And the first thing I thought is, at least I like to share the cherubs. Can't we have the cherubs at least? But, come on, just those. They're just like cute little things, Imagine. Cherubs. Okay. You guys are no fun. Okay. I was watching the movie Life of Pi. Did you ever see? Anybody here see Life of Pi? Yeah. Well, anyway, in the end, it has various. It's kind of complex, so you don't know if it's about religion or not about religion, because they're talking about religion and reason and everything. And at the very end of the movie, because the way you interpret it, it could have religious elements or non-religious elements, and they were talking about the story, and I think they were referring to religion at the end, and the character says, well, it's a better story, which is two parts to that. One is, he says it's a story, but then he does say it's better, so I don't know if it's a better story, but he does say it's a story, so it's a very interesting movie. Now, a little bit about myself. Of course, as we all know, we've all experienced, I've done a lot of thinking about religion in my lifetime, certainly, and I'm big into psychology. I read about psychology and self-help books, and I do all these meditation things and so forth, and I spend a lot of time introspecting, as a matter of fact, and digging into my own psychology, and who better to look at an experiment than yourself? These Buddhist monks, sometimes they're referred to as psychonauts, because they don't go to the outer reaches of the universe, they go to the inner reaches of their own mind and search things out, and sometimes through introspection. So I always thought to myself, this religion is a big thing, because I was born rather poor, and sometimes the poor, get more into religion than the rich. That's just the way it is. On the average, I always talk in averages, because I do have a degree in chemistry, and I study a lot of science, so I'm always talking about averages and things. And so when I was young, of course, I was baptized into the Lutheran religion. I was in northern Minnesota. However, when I was 18, I was baptized again into the Episcopalian because the first one didn't take, apparently. So I've been baptized twice. So there we go. But anyway, so, when you're young, of course, and if you repeatedly say something over and over to a youngster, think, well, maybe there's something to that. Maybe there is a heaven, an afterlife. maybe there is a supernatural being called God. Okay, and so this is repeated over and over and over and over. And everybody has long-held beliefs, whether they're, you know, about things and so forth. And so the first, so I went through life and kind of, you know, learned about a lot of religions and went to church. And then it sort of went away, and I went to college, got my degree in chemistry. Then went to law school, and I've always been interested in civil rights. And so when I got out of law school, I started taking civil rights cases, which civil rights basically means against the government. Individuals suing the government. That's what civil rights is. It doesn't mean anything to do with race lots of times either, because that's only one of the civil rights laws has to do with race or religion, and some of them just has to do with anybody can sue the government for violations. So anyway, so I was president of the ACLU, and we'd done some, sending out some letters about different schools and so forth, you know, preaching and, you know, saying, hey, you should be doing that. You know, that could be against the law. We might end up suing you. So, and we had some success with that and so forth. And then somehow the discussion came up in one meeting about the Bible in front of the Harris County Courthouse, and I don't even remember how it came up. And it's funny it didn't stick in my mind because I had seen it there, but I was rushing through about my day, and it just like this, and I just walk right by it and not even think to myself, well, that's the government. Harris County is a government. So why is a Bible sitting in a pedestal, lit up in front of the government? It seems like that's government property. Seems to be promoting religion because there's no other books there, and even if there were other books there, what would that mean? You're still promoting it. Maybe you were promoting other things, but you were promoting that religion. And so, now that I think about it, the way I remember it, and memories aren't the greatest, so we all think we have great memories. Yeah, right. I think memories sometimes are romanticize your past and everything. Oh, yes, everything's, you know, just the way I thought about it. But I think it was at a meeting where you were, and I think people were talking about it, and nobody wanted to be a plaintiff. And, you know, that's why I really do have to laud Kay Staley, because people are frightened to be plaintiffs, but not this person. I want to give Kay another hand. Now, the lawyer has to do all the work, though. And so I'm so glad that Kay decided to take that case. We got a semi-conservative judge. His name is Sim Lake, but he's a straight shooter, as they say in the legal world, and that is, you know, he's gonna, you know, call it pretty much as he sees it, a little bit on the right, but, you know, he's not like what they call nowadays, what are the people who are activists? He's not an activist judge. What's that? Yeah. So anyway, we were in front of him, and we sued, and it was very interesting because, of course, you have all these pro-religion and government people. Anytime there's a lawsuit or anything, they all jump on the side. That's how they raise their money. Oh, well, look, religion's being attacked. You know, look at these godless communists, you know, coming after us. And if we don't give some money and keep this book here, you know, who knows what'll happen. Cats will be mating with dogs. So, but let me tell you a little bit of history actually about the Bible in front of the Harris County Courthouse, because after World War II, you had the communist scare. That's when the communists were taking over. Of course, communist was well known to be godless. And the Bible being put there was actually a part of the display throughout the United States that America is not godless. So it was sort of like a reaction to our number one enemy, the communists. Because it was put there in 1954, during the height of this particular scare. And it's kind of interesting to note that this was also around the same time that they put under God into the Pledge of Allegiance, because as you all know, maybe you don't know this, that was never in there, and that was around the same time as there, together, encouraged by some Catholic groups. They put under God in there. And as I always like to tell people, some of these religious people who want that under God in there, well, we had World War I where we won without under God in our Pledge of Allegiance. We had World War II, and we won that without under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. We put under God in there, and then we had Vietnam. That's what I tell all the conservatives. Listen, do you love this country or not?
Also put
So basically, because I do talk to conservative audiences, and you always got to talk to, and there's some conservatives here. Like there's one right there. What? Right there. One, or maybe there's more. I don't know. But so you always got to speak to your audience, and you get some conservative people. You always tell them that this country doesn't need under God because we lose when you get up. You always got to do this. That always helps. But anyhow, there was some so that's how the Bible came there, and it fell into disrepair. And the podium was a rock, kind of a rock podium. It's kind of like this high, and the slope like this with the opening in the top. And it got into disrepair. Somebody put a garbage can in there, and the Bible wasn't even in there for a long time. But then a politician, as politicians do, John Devine was his name, which is very funny. He has the last name of Devine, and he became one of the Harris County civil court judges. And one of the things he did is he said, I'm going to repair this thing and put the Bible back in there, and like it had been, and that's what he did. He set about to raise money, and they had a big rededication of the Bible thing, and then there sat the freshly put in Bible, and it's all lit up and everything. And so it was basically politics. As you see today, people calling on God because it's votes. I mean, if you look at your politicians, it's votes. Because in Texas, I don't know how many atheist politicians there are out there, but there's very, very few. Not maybe up north there's a few. But so anyway, that's how it got there. And then this was when the religious right, of course, was in full swing. And you know that Houston, Harris County here, is a center for the religious right. There's a lot of religious right groups. This is like one of the centers for the religious right. And so when we went to try to move the Bible, of course, all these groups got together. And these outside groups, outside agitators, came down and tried to, from other parts of the country, to tell us that you got to keep our Bible there. But anyway, so we went to the federal courthouse, and we eventually had a hearing. Because this is primarily what's called an issue of law, and the facts were not disputed. Basically, you can see exactly what it is. In some criminal court cases, and civil cases, you'll have disputes about facts, like who did what. But it was sitting there. It's a Bible. There's no dispute about the facts. So we had no jury trial. It was just purely a judge trial. It was an issue of law, so to speak. And so when we had the case, it was going on. There was a lot of publicity. And it's odd that until you're exposed to something, you really don't know sometimes what's going on. So myself, being having a degree in chemistry, and later in my life not really surrounding myself with religion, and growing up in Minnesota, mostly later on in Minneapolis, where religion is, there's some religious people there, but it's not as big as down here. I thought, what's the big deal? I found out it was a big deal. That was a pretty big deal. There was people calling and TV stations coming down, and the funniest thing was when some people got a hangman's noose and a hangman's thing, and they put an effigy of federal judge Sim Lake, and they hung him in effigy right on the courthouse steps. So those are some of the people that you're dealing with. But so we eventually had our hearing. And one aspect of it that was kind of interesting was the fellow who had orchestrated putting it there a long time ago, in the 54. I can't even remember his name, but he was the head of the founder of the Star of Hope. Yeah.
Robert Mosier?
Yes, Robert Mosier. Robert Mosier was still alive. He was like in his 90s, and he came to testify for the defense, to keep it there. But they didn't keep him on the stand very long, because what I found out was he did not like Hindus, and he said so on the bench. He started making fun of them on the bench. He was saying about how they have so many gods and everything, and then I got him to make some admissions, and of course he's 90-something, poor guy, because he'd never been in court, but he didn't sound very good. Maybe he sounded good back in the 50s. During the communist scare, but he wasn't sounding quite as good because it apparently didn't change his views for the last 60 years. But But anyway, you know, with all difference of the man, he did do some good for the city and so forth. But anyway, so Sim Lake decided that it violated the separation of church and state, the Establishment Clause, and we got a judgment in Kay's favor. But that's just the beginning point with these groups that, you know, for religious and political reasons. Remember, they're paying, it's the taxpayers' money. It's y'all's money that's paying for the defense of this thing. Because it's the government, they have their own lawyers. So since they're freely spending taxpayers' money, they take it up to the next level, which is the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And we have a hearing there. And Americans United helped us out because at that time, you know, I considered them to be an expert in this issue. And while I had some knowledge of it, there was like 20 lawyers on the other side from all these groups, so I figured I better get some, you know. Usually it's a fair fight with me is 10 lawyers to me, 20 lawyers, I'll admit that's low. You know. So we got Americans United to come in, and they helped us out, and we won in front of the 3-judge panel. The first thing you get in a federal appellate court is a 3-judge panel. We won there. And then they wanted to take it up further, and since even the Fifth Circuit is a conservative court as well, the other side moved to what's called en banc, which means the entire 16-judge panel had to hear it. So, and they accepted it because it was so, you know, controversial or whatever. I don't know why they accepted it. They don't usually accept too many for en banc hearing, and so I got to give that the en banc hearing, and we went to New Orleans, and there was about 16 judges. I think that wasn't my first time I did my first oral argument at appeal. Well, my second, actually. I did a state court appeal. But what's interesting about that is you would think that to be in front of more judges is more difficult. Actually, it's much, much easier. Because like right now, if any one of you is frowning, I just pick up somebody who isn't frowning. Oh, that guy's frowning. I just turn to another one. So it's actually much easier to be in front of 15 judges than it is to be in front of one judge. You never know what that one judge is about. But so we eventually won, and it was moved from in front of the Harris County Courthouse, and it sits even today in some storage somewhere, waiting for that day when the right is going to bring it back. They never know what's going to do with it. But and I've done 2 other cases. I helped with that recent case, the Kuntz cheerleaders case, where they were running through the banners, the religious banners at the high school football games, and that helped with that. But the other case was the case that we had against the Houston City Council, and I go there quite frequently for a wide variety of reasons to speak at City Council, and they're still praying up a storm there, praying to Jesus. Gosh. They're praying every single meeting. And I believe it to be unconstitutional. Now the case that Kay and I had, however, started out not too good. We got what I didn't like was the judge, and we had a few other problems, so that one foundered. So we're batting 500, Kay. That's not bad. In the major leagues, we usually be the best batter there is if we're batting 500, so we're still batting 500. But so the religion in government is very interesting. Kay had mentioned, and I don't know how much people speak about religion and why religion exists, but you know, I've been doing chemistry and I study a lot of science, and I read Scientific American, and every once in a while they try to scientifically figure out why are people religious. And one of the more recent studies, or recent theories, is that because when our brain developed a long time ago, we had to avoid, you know, lions and tigers and bears on the savannah or whatever. And I don't know how this scientist came up with this idea. Sounds good, but it said that like on the savannah, there's a lot of tall grass, and if you see the head of a leopard and then you don't see it, your mind has to figure out that there's something going on behind there, and so it attempts to figure out what's going on when they can't see something. And that's what this theory was. When you can't see something or tell what it is, you come up with something. And I guess the supernatural beings are the way that some humans, you know, come up with this idea of what's going on. Why are there supernovas, and why is the Earth floating around, and why are there so many animals? But you know, it's an interesting subject. You know, religion, very touchy. being a lawyer, you have to really be delicate about it as well, because of course you're appealing to, you have to appeal to the public as best you can. And I do a lot of PR, both being in the American Civil Liberties Union when I was president, and I'm now in the National Lawyers Guild and so forth. And PR is very important, so one has to get their message across. You always have to be very, very careful. So of course, as you all probably know, most of you, it's kind of hard just to attack religion. A lot of times that just doesn't work. Like insult religion and that stuff, doesn't fly too well. Even though you might feel like that's what I want to do. So the PR is always kind of a tough sell. But it was an interesting journey. One of the best cases I've had. I learned a lot about religion and government and religion in general. But and this hat is for sale for $900. 10% will go to the that fellow there and that woman that was injured.
Oh, wow.
So that is my religious hat.
What happened with the cheerleaders and the banners?
Well, actually, that's still going on because, of course, as I always say, this stuff is so political that the legal stuff that was going on in that county, in that small town, in that county. I can't remember the name of the county. It's Kuntz, Texas.
Hardin County.
What county?
Hardin County.
Hardin County. If you don't believe in Jesus, you ain't going to be elected to nothing. And you're not going to be reelected if you don't believe in Jesus. So that judge, the state court judge, of course, as I predicted, had to decide for the school. However, of course, since it does involve the Constitution, eventually it could find its way to federal court. And so they're still negotiating right now. And I got a message from the Freedom from Religion Foundation just last week that they're still trying to decide what to do with the case. They're still, I think they're still doing it, but the case is still going on, so I really can't say how it's going to end up. But what they need to do there from a lawyer's strategy point is, the way that the court case happened was someone sued the school district for not allowing it to happen under freedom of speech and freedom of religion. Texas has this law called the Texas Restorative Religious
Religious Freedom Restoration Act?
Yeah, that's it, which is like several states have this law. It's a supercharged freedom of religion law. And so you can't run afoul of that. However, I think that even the Fed would trump that state case. But anyway, what needs to happen there is some plaintiffs have to come forward and say that it violates their the separation of church and state. But that hasn't happened. And so until that happens, I don't see how they're going to get really anywhere with getting rid of it.
How are you coming on your case with the prayer at the city council meeting?
The what?
The prayer at the city council meeting.
Yes.
We don't have that. One's not going on. We lost that one. I mean, but it was.
We didn't get. Did we get a judgment on that?
No. I think we dismissed it.
It was dismissed recwithout prejudice, as I recall.
Yeah, dismissed without prejudice. Because our first round of the case. I'll give you some boring lawyer strategy. We got a bad judge, and you can beat your head against the wall, or you can just dismiss it, and maybe file something later.
What does without prejudice mean?
That means that you can refile it again. The thing is not decided. If you go through a whole court case and it comes to the end, that's the ruling, and you can't file another case and try to do the same thing. You can't file the same case over. But if it's without prejudice, it means it hasn't been decided yet, so you could actually refile it. It has not yet been decided.
You need a Lazarus reviver.
Yeah.
How do you see that might be challenged?
You need plaintiffs.
Yeah,
Strange as it is again,
but
plaintiffs just don't come forward.
well, maybe we have some plaintiffs.
Well, one of the legal issues involved in all this is what's called standing. And standing, I'll give you an easy interpretation of standing, the most radical, you know what it means. Let's say that I hear about a car accident in Florida involving two people I don't know, Frank Jones and Susan Smith. And I see that Susan Smith was at fault for running into Frank Jones. I don't know any of them about reading the paper. I sue a lawsuit. I, in my name, sue file a lawsuit in Florida that says, hey, I want $100,000 because there's an accident happened. The first thing is, you don't have standing because you have nothing to do with this. And so the first hurdle you have to do is, just because you hear about something or know something is going on, including in these cases, that does not maybe necessarily confer standing. So the question is, what is standing? Well, the law is kind of fluid and I'm not exact, but a person with good standing would be a person who actually goes to city council, sits down, and all of a sudden they're praying. Oh, and they're offended. I know people here would be offended by their prayers, and that could be a plaintiff if they in fact did that. Sir?
Would someone who lives in Spring be able to be have standing?
You wouldn't have to be a citizen of the city of Houston as long as you were, you know, in that city council meeting. And it would be good if you were there for some business, and you can just look at the long list of things, and you probably find something that you would be interested in. So it'd be better if you were there for, not for the sole purpose of getting offended.
Well,
Go ahead, sir.
If a judge dismisses a case with prejudice, do you still have any recourse to have that case retried, or is it essentially over?
Well, this case was without prejudice. However, you can always appeal it.
Yeah.
And also with this case, actually, if they keep on praying, those could be considered new facts, and you'd have to look at those new prayers, because it's still going on. So even if it was with prejudice, but that's just all speculation, because it was without speculation. It was without prejudice.
but they're now live streaming that. Both
Well, they have been live streaming it for some time.
And the county and
Yeah.
the
So
city.
the question arises. What you're saying, and you know, see, the problem is courts can make different decisions later on that conflict with their or you know, adjust their old cases. So the question arises: if you see it on television, where you can just change the channel or walk out of the room, does that confer standing if you're insulted by that happening at your city council meeting? So it's, you know, because standing has to do with injury. Are you injured? Have you personally been injured?
I'm injured by watching
Not in
that.
any way. It has to be the legal standard, because of course I could say I was offended by Frank Jones getting hit by the answer. That affects me. So in other words,
Direct effect.
well, it has to have the exact legal definition of standing is you have to have injury in fact. But then that has a long line of cases. We could have a whole legal class on what the injuries would be. So
It's pretty complicated.
it is complicated, but of course, the more directly you're involved, the more likely you are to have standing. Certainly, I would believe if you were actually there and heard a prayer and that offended you.
I guess it'd be like in the case where you're an employee in a workplace and there's some religious involvement, and they're trying to compel you to do something religious.
If they're personally
you have standing in that.
If they're personally talking to you, yes. But of course, if you just hear that your friend was, you heard that they were on the other side of the plant on Tuesday and it's Wednesday, and you're personally offended, that might not be standing.
Yeah.
So are you saying that they can continue to do that prayer even though it's obviously against the law?
They are.
Until
they are doing it every
somebody,
week.
I just don't understand why it just isn't done. You know what I'm saying? Like if someone has to
politics.
sue.
Yeah, it's politics. It's politics. Ask every politician, are you an atheist?
No.
We'll see what you say. Or you believe in Jesus. I bet you every single last one of them will say they are. The ones who are successful in office, that is.
Political suicide.
So they're posturing.
What's that?
They're just posturing.
Well, they want votes because, of course, our mayor today is Denise Parker, and she's up there praying as well. And I don't know how religious Denise Parker is, but she's up there praying with him, and so.
She's not.
What?
She's not.
Not praying?
No, she's not
Yeah.
religious at all.
See, it's for votes. Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned, or Kate mentioned that Baptists were involved in these separation of church and state issues. Is that still the case?
I mean,
Yes.
there are people in religion who don't want religion in government because the opposite then becomes true. Government isn't a religion. And I sue the government all the time, so who in the hell would want government in their organization? Well, would you want the government regulating the Humanist Society?
Is that
No.
because, is that because early on, the Anglicans, now Episcopalians, were trying to suppress the Baptists in Virginia? And Jefferson Thomas came in and said, I don't believe, but I'm going to defend you. Is that where that came from?
Well, it's probably true that at one point they were not the dominant religion somewhere, and so through the government, the other dominant religion tried to oppress the lesser religion. And so that's basically how it always happens. That's why, for instance, the Mormons are all for separation of church and state, except everywhere but Utah. So they're for it because they're the majority.
I saw a thing on Jeopardy yesterday. Roger Williams was the first person in the United States to establish a law of separation of church and state in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Rhode Island? Okay, Rhode Island.
Ma'am?
So when I go to city council for business and I find it offensive, who do I contact?
You give her a contact a lawyer.
Because I have a lot of free time on my hands right now being unemployed.
You have a plan.
Well, you should have, if you go there, I mean, you should really honestly look for. The city does so many things.
Oh yeah.
If you're probably interested in more than just the Humanist Society, right?
Yeah.
You look through all the things that are going on in the newspaper, and you can talk at their Tuesday public speaking session at 1:30. This is where it occurs about any subject of the city at all. I mean, right of way, garbage, police, anything you'd want, and you can sign up. You can city secretary, and you sign up starting at any time before, and you get on a list to speak.
Okay.
You have to be actually. You actually have to be in Harris County to be able to do that, though.
No, anybody. If you're from Germany, you can sign up to speak and come down and speak at the council. Yeah. You don't have to be a resident of the city of Houston to sue.
No, but to sue you would be.
No, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
No. You don't have to be a resident of the city of Houston to sue because you were at a government meeting and you had a business there. You don't have to be a Houstonian because Houston does a whole bunch of business with everybody who drives to the city of Houston has a connection to the city of Houston. You can come there and say, hey, your roads are at potholes in it when I was driving through. Could you get those fixed, please? And, so you don't really have to be a citizen, a resident of Houston.
Regarding this case with the Bible, what arguments were used against you and how did you counter them?
Oh, well, there was a variety of arguments. One is that it's been there for so long that you shouldn't, what is that? Basically, that was a generalized argument, which has some basis in the law that it had been there so long. Other things was it doesn't promote religion, which I thought was the most ridiculous one. Basically, I said, Your Honor, the Bible, it's the holy book of Christianity. I didn't have to use that. I could have just said, it's the Bible. It doesn't need further explanation. That is the explanation. It's the Bible.
What about all the graven images that were around it too?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. I'm going to get to you to just a second, but I got to tell you a funny joke. Because of course, when you're dealing with this is a true story. When you're dealing with separation of church and state, you get religious zealots. You know all about religious zealotry, and some people might bug you. One of my friends actually got kind of mad at me when she found out I was involved in this lawsuit. But anyway, one person called me, and I was surprised more people didn't call me. And this person was definitely religious, and I could tell just by the first words out of her mouth was like, "Are you the lawyer who's helping move that Bible?" And I act fast. Being a lawyer, you act fast, and I say, "Oh yes, because those politicians, they're not following the Word of God. Why should that Bible be there? They're not following the Word of God." And she goes, "Yeah."
The Supreme Court ruled that the Ten Commandments can still stay on the law in front of state capitol in Austin.
Yeah, that was a 5-4 decision, but simultaneously with that coming out on the same day was a 5-4 decision that the Ten Commandments could not stay in a courthouse in somewhere. So what I'm getting at is this is actually one of the more complex areas of law where you'd think that it was like there was a Bible on property, that's it, and the opinion would be this long. The opinions are like pages and pages, and they're going through all the history and all these different things because it's a totality of the circumstances type argument. And they're not easy because it takes a lot of paperwork, a lot of research.
Yeah, no, question I wanted to ask you was actually two questions. Have you ever heard of the religious rights answer to the lemon test, a little thing called the Marsh test? And what's your opinion about people who say that the Constitution and the laws of our land are based on the Bible?
Well, the Constitution, I mean, is based upon a bunch of people getting together and deciding and writing up a Constitution. Whether it's based on anything, it really doesn't make any difference because all the words are the words. In other words, you don't refer to other documents. If the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, then that is your basis. Now, religion, of course, covers a whole bunch of wide varieties of subject matter, and of course, some of them I don't disagree with. For instance, I read the Gospel in the Bible, and I think that some of the things a lot of the things in the Bible have nothing to do with super beings and supernatural beings, such as help poor people. I mean, because that's in the Bible, are we all going to say don't help poor people? Hell no. We're not going to say don't help poor people. So what I'm getting at is the statement, it's all based in the Bible. The Bible, first of all, is very lengthy, if you've ever looked at it. And so the subject matter in there is very, very broad. So you could make the claim that everything you could connect to the Bible. So, it doesn't seem to be based on the Bible. What do you think?
Another question about the Marsh test?
Well, the Marsh test, that had to do with legislatures, the invocations at legislatures, and so that is really not in effect here. It does seem to be quite a pro-religious opinion. However, it does not apply to, it only applies to legislative bodies.
I don't know one thing for sure, but my opinion, if it was replaced, if they managed to get it to replace the lemon test, I think it would be rather insidious.
Yeah. Well, it is a much more pro-religion